All right, welcome back. Today we are going to be going over Seneca's letter to Lucilius, letter 8. This is on the Philosopher's Seclusion. And so let's go ahead and just jump into this. So in verse 1 he says, "Do you bid me, you say, shun the throng and withdraw from men, and be content with my own conscience? Where there are counsels of your school, where are the counsels of your school which order a man to die in the midst of active work? As to the course, which I seem to you to be urging on you now and then, my object in shutting myself up and locking the door is to be able to help a greater number. I never spend a day in idleness. I appropriate even a part of the night for study. I do not allow time for sleep, but yield to it when I must. And when my eyes are wearied with waking and ready to fall shut, I keep them at their task." So all he's saying in verse 1 here is he's saying that he does withdraw. He spends time in seclusion, and he does this in order to be able to help a greater number of people. And that he's constantly, even though he's by himself, he's not just doing nothing. He is studying. He is spending his time, even when he's tired, to learn more and to study more. In verse 2, he says, "I have withdrawn not only from men, but from affairs, especially from my own affairs. I am working for later generations, writing down some ideas that may be of assistance to them. There are certain wholesome counsels which may be compared to prescriptions of useful drugs. These I am putting into writing, for I have found them helpful in ministering to my own sores, which, if not wholly cured, have at any rate ceased to spread." So a couple things that he's saying here. So he's saying that not only has he withdrawn from other people, but from his own life to a degree, right? To the things that someone might be working towards in life, in their typical life. But he's doing this in order to create wisdom for future generations, right? And he's saying that what's happening here is that these things that he's writing down, these counsels, these things that he's thought about, they're like drugs, okay, and they're useful for helping people to cure themselves. And he's saying that he's found them helpful in helping himself, and even though he's not fully cured, or which you can never totally be, it has at least stopped the spread of the disease within himself, right? So he's at least found these to be rehabilitating. And one thing I'll say about this as well is that what he's doing right here is that he's spending a lot of time by himself thinking about things. This is what a philosopher does. This is what you should be doing in life. The best sort of things that you're going to learn and the best kind of advice that you're going to get is going to be from the time that you spend in seclusion, just thinking things through, right? When I think about my own life and the wisdom that I've been able to gain in life and to share with other people, it's been because I have spent time really thinking about these thoughts. I've come up with a lot of different life philosophies of my own life philosophy, not to get too off track, but these things have come from me spending a lot of time in thought by myself, thinking about these things, right? This is really how you get a really deep knowledge or wisdom. In verse 3, he says, I point other men to the right path, which I have found late in life, when wearied with wandering. I cry out to them, avoid whatever pleases the throng, avoid the gifts of chance. Halt before every good which chance brings to you in a spirit of doubt and fear. For it is the dumb animals and fish that are deceived by tempting hopes. Do you call these things the, quote, gifts of fortune? They are snares. And any man among you who wishes to live a life of safety will avoid to the utmost of his power these limited twigs of her favor, by which we mortals, most wretched in this respect also, are deceived. For we think that we hold them in our grasp, but they hold us in theirs. So what he's saying here is that to not be looking for the things that randomly come into your life, right? For good luck, fortune, right? He's saying that whatever good that comes about by luck, by chance, okay, that just comes into your life, kind of dumb luck, it's not actually a good thing. You might think it's a good thing, but it's actually a snare. Now, why would it be a snare? Well, I'll tell you why. The reason why it's a snare is because you think that you hold this thing. You think that you own this thing, but really you don't, right? Instead, it holds you because it's something that now you're seeking or that you want to keep in your life or you want to get more of, but you don't have control over, right? So it's a deception to believe that this is a good thing, because it may appear to be good, and it doesn't mean that you can't enjoy the good things in life, but don't hold on to them. Don't try and seek these things out. Realize what they are. Realize that if you get something that just happens by chance, if you get something for nothing, that there is a cost with that. And the cost is that you are going to be ensnared by that thing because you can't recreate that thing, right? So the good things, the true goods in life, which Seneca talks about in many of the Stoics, are the virtues, the values that you create within yourself. As you cultivate your own spirit and your own character, those create goods. Why? Because those goods are in your control. You can recreate those things. You can have those things at any time. Whereas whatever fortune brings you, you can't guarantee that you could get that again because it's random. So you shouldn't be counting on those type of things. In verse 4, he says, such a career leads us into precipitous ways, and life on such heights ends in a fall. Moreover, we cannot even stand up against prosperity when she begins to drive us leeward, nor can we go down either with the ship at least on her course or once for all. Fortune does not capsize us. She plunges our bows under and dashes us on the rocks. So again, the gist of this is that fortune is not your friend. Fortune might seem like your friend, but not only it's not just going to capsize you, it's going to totally destroy you. It's not going to have any regard for you. It's going to dash you on the rocks, as he says, right? So by what he's doing is he's saying that you're setting yourself up for a fall, right? So if you are attached to the things in life that you don't have control over, then when they eventually go away, which they will because you weren't able to bring them about, it's just a twist of fortune, then you're going to fall pretty hard, and that's going to be rough. So don't count on those things. In verse 5, he says, hold fast then to this sound and wholesome rule of life, that you indulge the body only so far as needed for good health. The body should be treated more rigorously, that it may not be disobedient to the mind. Eat merely to relieve your hunger, drink merely to quench your thirst, dress merely to keep out the cold, house yourself merely as a protection against personal discomfort. It matters little whether the house be built of turf or of variously colored imported marble. Understand that a man is sheltered just as well by a thatch as by a roof of gold. Despise everything that useless toil creates as ornament and an object of beauty, and reflect that nothing except the soul is worthy of wonder. For to the soul, if it be great, naught is great. Okay, let's dissect that a little bit. So what he's saying is this. He's saying, look, you don't try and get all this stuff that is beyond your basic needs, right? Food is food. Okay, shelter is shelter. Clothing is clothing. You don't need an excess of these things, or really the ornamental versions of these things, right? You're going to spend a lot of time and a lot of effort working in order to have something that is, quote, beautiful, but it doesn't provide any more value than just standard food. Or, he uses here an example of a roof of gold does not provide any more comfort than a roof of thatch, right? Meaning that just because something is more expensive and more valuable and more coveted doesn't provide any actual value to that. And what he's saying here at the end, which is really important, is he's saying that he says, and reflect that nothing except the soul is worthy of wonder, for to the soul, if it be great, naught is great. What he's saying is saying if you have a great soul, okay, then all of that stuff is not great. It is only great to someone who has not worked on themselves, who does not have the character. Then they will see those things as valuable, because someone of true value who has a great soul, as what he's saying, realizes that only the soul is worthy of wonder. Only these philosophical things, only the contemplation, only your existence and these things are value, whereas all of these ornamental things are not value. And this is really good because think about how much time that you spend chasing after the ornamental things, right? Instead of the functional, right? What is the difference? Why would someone spend $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 on a car when they can get a perfectly good car for $10,000 or $5,000? Why spend 6-7 times the price, a huge amount of money on a car? Like, think about that. The only reason is truly the ornamental reason. You might say, oh, it's a faster car, it's more efficient, blah, 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 all these things. Sure. That might be true. However, is that really of utility value to you? It is probably not. If you really think about it, it's the status. It's the thing that it provides you that is more than just the basic need. And that's a waste, honestly. Verse 6, he says, when I commune in such terms with myself and with future generations, do you not think that I am doing more good than when I appear as counsel in court, or stamp my seal upon a will, or lend my assistance in the Senate, by word or action to a candidate? Believe me, those who seem to be busied with nothing are busied with the greater task. They are dealing at the same time with things mortal and things immortal. So he's saying, you could say that I'm neglecting my duties. Like it's valuable for me to be doing these things in the world and in the court, right? Because Seneca worked for the emperor. He was he was in a pretty high position, right? So, but what he's saying is that no, I'm doing more valuable things. Like just because someone isn't appearing in public, they seem to be busied with nothing, are actually busy with the greater. The greater tasks are the things that you contemplate about life, about philosophy, right? It's not chasing after all of these ornamental things, like he was saying before. In verse 7, he says, "But I must stop and pay my customary contribution to balance this letter. The payment shall not be made from my own property, for I am still conning Epicurus." I read today in his works the following sentence, quote, "If you would enjoy real freedom, you must be the slave of philosophy. The man who submits and surrenders himself to her is not kept waiting. He is emancipated on the spot. For the very service of philosophy is freedom." Okay, so just that, this is a quote that he got from Epicurus. Okay, Epicurus is basically saying that, look, if you would want to really actually be free, then you've got to study philosophy. You have to live your life, not just study, but according to philosophy. Okay, the man who submits and surrenders himself to her is not kept waiting. He's emancipated on the spot. Right? It's the service of philosophy that's freedom. So what does that really mean? What that means is it doesn't mean just to study philosophy. It means to live philosophy. It means to abide by the general principles of life. Because the purpose of philosophy in this context of this type of philosophy is to discover the nature of reality. It's to discover not the scientific nature of reality, but the unwritten laws of nature, of relationship, of humanity, of what it means to be human. And as you discover those things, if you want to be free, you have to understand your own psychology. You have to understand why things are the way that they are. You have to understand things like letting go of expectations, right? Why? Because you're going to be a slave to your desires and your expectations if you do not let them go. And if you don't study philosophy and you don't understand that, you won't be able to do that. And if you don't exercise that, then you are going to be a slave. To have true freedom is to recognize this. And as soon as you recognize these concepts, you become free instantaneously. In verse 8, he says, "It's likely you'll ask me why I quote so many of Epicurus's noble words instead of words taken from our own school. But is there any reason why you should regard them as sayings of Epicurus and not common property? How many poets give forth ideas that have been uttered or may be uttered by philosophers? I need not touch upon the tragedians and our writers of national drama, for these last are also somewhat serious and stand halfway between comedy and tragedy. What a quantity of sagacious verses lie buried in the mime. How many of Publius's lines are worthy of being spoken by buskin-clad actors as well as by wearers of the slipper." Okay, so so what he's saying here is that a lot of people at this time, and not just at this time, but in general, form sort of sects, right? They form these clubs. They subscribe to this philosophy and not this one. They're Democrats, they're Republicans, they're whatever political party. They form these groups, and then they're so adherent to that particular thing. And what he's saying is, look, all of this is just common. Why are you saying, why don't you talk about or quote something from the school of Stoic philosophy? Why Epicurus? It's a competing philosophy. Why, and he's saying that, why do you call it his? It's just wisdom. Like if someone you don't like gives you wisdom, is it now not wisdom? If someone who says some things that are wrong says something that's right, is it now not right? That's ridiculous. He's like, everybody sort of owns this. This is not, and there's no original ideas. We're discovering the truth of nature, of reality, and plenty of poets and writers have discovered it as well. And all of these things are philosophy. All of these things are valuable. He says in verse 9, I shall quote one verse of his which concerns philosophy, and particularly the phase of it which we were discussing a moment ago, wherein he says that gifts of chance are not to be regarded as part of our possessions. Still alien is whatever you have gained by coveting. So that's the quote. Okay, so he's saying, so here he's got another piece of wisdom from Epicurus, and he's saying that it's again what he said in this letter about the gifts of chance. He says, and the quote is, still alien is whatever you have gained by coveting. So what he's saying here is that if you gain something by coveting it, and what does it mean to covet? It means to almost be envious, to want something that's not yours, okay? And if you gain it by those means, then it's still you still don't feel like you've gotten it, right? It'll never satisfy you. It's only when you have earned a thing then you feel satisfied in gaining that thing. In verse 10, he says, I recall that you yourself expressed this idea much more happily and concisely. Quote, what chance has made yours is not really yours. And third, spoken by you still more happily shall not be omitted. The good that could be given can be removed. Okay, so he's taking these two here, and he's talking about the same idea expressed in a different way. So the first one is, what chance has made yours is not really yours. Again, this is what we said in this letter. What he said in this letter is that whatever has been given to you by chance is not really yours, right? I have a quote. I always say that I only want what I have earned. Okay, and that is the same as this. What chance has made yours is not really yours. Why is it not really yours? We talked about this. It's because you can't create it. You can't make it come to being. It's not in your control. It's fleeting, right? And then the other quote he says is that good that could be given can be removed. Okay, again, this is why, right? This is why what comes to you by chance that you haven't earned is not yours, is because whatever good, if it can be given to you, it can also be removed from you, right? And so that's really the goal of Stoic philosophy, and that's really the goal of a Stoic, is to recognize that I don't want anything that can be given to me, or I'm not going to form attachments to things that are given to me because it can be removed. Anything that can be removed is not really valuable, okay? What is valuable? The things that cannot be removed. I always talk about if everything got burned up in a fire, whatever remained would be the only thing that is truly yours, which is yourself, your character, right? The only thing that could withstand that. So all of these other things that can be given to you can be taken away from you. And so you even some of the attributes that you have, right? Let's say your youth, your health, your beauty, those things can be taken from you. They're given to you. You didn't create those things, but they can be taken from you. So they're not of true value. What is of true value is the things that cannot be taken from you. That's the wisdom. That is the philosophy that you learn in life. And then finally, he says, I shall not charge this up to the expense account because I have given it to you from your own stock. Farewell. So he does this little thing with his letters where he's, basically saying that I'm giving you this wisdom and here's the charge for this thing. But he's saying in this case, well, this came from you. You said these things. And so there's no fee for this one. I'll see you tomorrow.